Hello everybody and welcome to this Code Wrinkles live stream. I guess it's the first live stream in over or around 1 year, so thank you very much for joining here. And I'm actually very excited to get this started. Also due to the fact that there were some very cool new stuff coming on with .NET 8. But first of all, please let me know if you can hear my voice well enough, if you can see my screen, and yeah, also please note that due to the live streaming itself, there is always some delay between when I say something or when I write something and when you will be able to actually see that. Well, this is how live streaming works, so it's not 100% real time. So just keep this in mind. That would be very important. Cool. So I already see that we have here a lot of people from a lot of different continents and different geographies, and I'm really excited about this. So I think if we also get somebody from Australia or New Zealand or that area, I guess we have all the continents here. So that's really awesome, and I totally like this. And thank you very much once again. If you're not familiar, you can also find me on Twitter and on LinkedIn. I'm streaming, by the way, also on LinkedIn. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, hello to my LinkedIn audience. But my main focus is obviously on my YouTube channel here. Okay, let's see here. Who do we still have? Here we have Juan. Hello, Dan from Munich, Germany. Munich, one of my favorite cities. That's kind of like very nice. And from Iran, I saw also Pakistan, India, South Africa, really all around. Cool. Okay, I assume that we all want to get started as fast as possible, but before we get started, there is one very important announcement that I would like to make today. And I know this might sound a little bit curious because everybody already does this, but I am also starting a newsletter. But this newsletter, well, I would call it maybe some kind of .NET newsletter, but it won't be only about .NET. But what I can assure you is that this Code Wrinkles newsletter will be totally different than any other newsletters that you have in this area. And if you want to join this newsletter, I can give you here the link. So I just set it up basically these days. And I would like to very shortly explain you how this newsletter will be different than all the others. So first of all, it will not be a weekly, but it will be bi-weekly newsletter. And it will start the next Thursday, so December 1st. It will be the first issue. So make sure to subscribe to this news channel, to join to the newsletter, to make sure that you don't miss the first issue of it. Now, just a few words about this type of newsletter is that I don't really want in this newsletter to come and just provide you some, I don't know, tips and tricks like, I don't know, how to avoid if statements and use switch expressions instead, or things similar that you can read in documentations or that you can read in get starting guides. So first of all, this newsletter will have, let's say, a main featured content that will sometimes be under form of text, sometimes it will be a video format, but that video format, that will be only for the newsletter subscribers. So it won't be published or publicly available on YouTube, it will be only for newsletter subscribers. And it will always start from discussions that I have with different teams and with different projects. And I would like to share from those real projects, like real life production apps, the questions that arrive from developers there or the problems that we face there. I want to bring them to you in that specific newsletter. So it might be that in some newsletter issues there will be discussions about common architectural tasks, or how can we, I don't know, achieve a certain thing or a certain functionality, or maybe even how can we lower the costs of our Microsoft Azure services, or depending exactly what comes up in the projects that I am involved with, I will kind of like extract from there all the information that I think it will be useful, and I will share that with you either, let's say, in form of text or video format. But once again, those videos will be only newsletter subscribers. So those videos will not be public. Also, obviously, in some newsletters, those videos or that content might include some code. So in that case, obviously, you will also get access to the source code. But there's much more to this newsletter, because I don't want people that are part of the community or of the Code Wrinkles community and the memberships, they already know that one of my main goals is to kind of like, I don't want to be an influencer, I don't want to influence anybody, but I want to be a mentor. So If people kind of like would like to have some of my mentoring part, then I want to give different options through which they actually can basically access this type of mentoring. Like being a member on YouTube of the Code Wrinkles channel already means, for instance, that you get access to the Discord community that we have, and there we have really a lot of different discussions. But I want to also give this option, or to extend this idea of kind of like online mentoring also through this newsletter. So what I will do in this newsletter, besides this main content or the feature content, one other thing that I will have there is, for instance, I will have in each newsletter issue, I will have a community Q&A, which means that for each issue, I will basically take one question that I get either on LinkedIn or on my YouTube videos or on my Discord channel that we have with the Code Wrinkles members, or wherever there is a question from the community, or where I see patterns of different questions that try to repeat. That question will also be part of, or that question and the answer obviously will also be part of that newsletter. But there's also more to it. I want to also include in this newsletter a community spotlight. And the community spotlight will be actually the place where I want to give you the opportunity to showcase the projects, for instance, that you are working on. For instance, if you develop a certain library, then you can just get in touch with me via this newsletter or via the other social networks where you can find me, and we can discuss about it, and I will feature that specific project, for instance, in this community spotlight, because I want to share some information. I want to share what everybody is doing here, because I think we all have to learn one from the other. And I'm sure that both for myself, I will find some libraries or projects or some things that I didn't know about and that I find exciting. And I think that probably for most of you that will also be part of this newsletter, this might be useful. And then depending on what happens, I will also include, if there are some important news in the .NET community, I will also include those specific news in the newsletter. In some of the issues, I want to have also some learning challenges where I will challenge you to learn something by providing you some initial hints and different materials, but then you will have to do things by your own. So all of this stuff will be in the newsletter. So not everything will be in every newsletter, but these three specific topics will be in every newsletter. So it will be the main content, the community Q&A, and hopefully, if I have what to show, the community spotlight. So everything, you can get access to everything for free, obviously, if you just join this newsletter, and let's hope that we'll make a successful one. Cool. So I guess I did talk a lot. I see there's a lot of messages here. Thank you all very, very much for subscribing to this newsletter. For those who are newer here, I will post the link once again, and I will also create a video on YouTube in which I will basically announce this newsletter. But I wanted to share this announcement like with you in this live stream for the very, very first time. Not even the Code Wrinkles member in our Discord server have received this information. So this is something totally new. Cool. Now that we have this behind us, let's get to what we want to achieve today, and probably for a pretty long time for now. So the thing is that what happened is that I was very excited by this whole .NET Aspire stuff. And let me also please know in the chat if you were excited by this idea of .NET Aspire and what it can do basically for developers when they develop, let's say, services-oriented stuff. Could be microservices, but not necessarily distributed as microservices. And then obviously I also have done a lot of videos on my YouTube channel about Blazor and this new Blazor SSR, or well, this new Blazor, let's call it like it. It's also very, very exciting, also for me at least, because I got to work with Next.js this summer quite a bit, and I see a lot of similarities in the functionality that it offers. Obviously the technology or the tech behind is different, implementations are different, and this might cause some, well, different issues. But the idea is that I think Blazor is with this release on really the right track, the right journey. And yeah, I guess overall that's a very cool stuff. So I was thinking, why can't I just bring these two pieces of let's say technology together and start building something so that we can all learn something from it. So both you and also me, obviously, because for me, a lot of these things like the new Blazor and that .NET Aspire, it's brand new also for me. So I'm also learning it. So don't expect me to be an expert on everything around Aspire and around Blazor, because I'm not. I'm still learning it. I try to apply it wherever I can to see what challenges we have and how we can overcome them. Cool. So, and I was thinking, okay, let's build. There was a comment at some point on one of the videos if we could build a school management application. So I was thinking, okay, let's take this idea of school management application because it's, I would say, broad enough so that it could justify this idea of making it service oriented. But on the other hand, it's also fairly easy to grasp as a domain model or, well, as a domain logic. So it would be easy to implement for me, and I guess easier for understand also for anybody else. Because if I would have started something, I don't know, like medical, healthcare or banking, well, probably that would be a lot much more difficult. Cool. So yeah, let's start with this, and we will basically start here from scratch. And yeah, every time you have a question, just feel free to leave it in the chat, and I will also get obviously into these discussions. Let me check the health of this stream, but it seems that everything is okay, so we are good to go, I guess. Cool. Let me just go back here. I just have to juggle a lot of things on my different screens, and yeah, it's been around 1 year since I've streamed last, so I kind of am a little bit rusty. Okay, so as you can see here, what I have is really a very blank solution, and this blank solution here. Yeah, let me just. Okay, so in this blank solution is the place where we'll actually do everything. And before we get into some coding, I want to kind of like set up some certain type of structure in my solution so that I know exactly, okay, what is what. So I usually like to do this using solution folders. And here, for instance, we can add a new solution folder. And there would be probably one folder that will be called services, in which we'll place our different microservices. Okay, can we start with, okay, there's a question here. Can we start with what type of project you have created? Is it okay to use MVC structure with the new Blazor? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by is it okay to use an MVC structure with the new Blazor, because Blazor is not MVC. Like MVC is an architectural pattern that comes with kind of like a pre-built prescription on how you should do different things. And the most important thing there is, for instance, the HTTP request. Now in Blazor applications, even in the new one, we don't always have this idea of HTTP request because it's an interactive application. So I don't know, depending on what you mean by structure, I mean, we could maybe apply some of the things. But yeah, we'll have also a lot of different APIs, because each service will be an API basically. So those APIs, they will be following this MVC architectural pattern basically. Probably in one of them we will use also the minimal API to also get a taste of that. And what is the major difference between API and microservice in general? Well, basically a microservice could be an API, but the difference is that a microservice could not really, or could also be not a REST API, but it could be using, for instance, just gRPC communication, so remote procedure calls. So basically a microservice is just a process that runs a certain piece of code. Now, what exactly that piece of code does and how it communicates with the outside world, it could be different. Like in most cases, or in a lot of cases, basically each microservice is in the end a REST API that exposes some HTTP endpoints through which the front end or other applications can communicate with it. But it could be also, for instance, if it just it's a microservice that exposes just a gRPC communication, that could also be possible. And in that case, it will be a microservices but not a REST API. So that's kind of like the difference in the way I see it. Cool. Then we'll have here another solution folder that we will call web, and here there will be our front end. And then we'll have another solution folder because this will allow us to kind of like at a certain point, maybe even go this route of having GraphQL. So I will use this pattern that is called a backend for frontend. So a backend for frontend is really an architectural approach to a microservices in which let's put it the other way. So one of the main problems when you have a microservices architecture is that you have your frontend, and your frontend, like if you have 50 different services, your frontend needs to know exactly which service to call for which type of information, and it needs to do a lot of different HTTP calls, and that is obviously not optimal from a lot of different viewpoints, even performance, because you would have to do a lot of HTTP calls. So instead of this, we usually have this idea of a backend for frontend, and this backend for frontend is more or less just an aggregator. So the frontend, for instance, just knows that it calls one specific endpoint from there, and then the backend for frontend will just reply, and it will aggregate all the information from the different services that is needed for a certain request, and it will just issue a response to the frontend. So the frontend will have to make only one HTTP call to the backend for frontend instead of having to do 5, 10, 50 different calls to each microservices. So we'll use this approach with backend for frontend. So I'll create a folder for that. Obviously, this idea of backend for frontend, usually as the name implies, is that, in a lot of cases you have the flexibility, or it might be better that, for instance, if you have a mobile application, as a frontend, that you create a dedicated backend for frontend for your mobile application, and then you will have two backend for frontends, one for the web application and the other for the mobile applications. Now, the reason why you might want to do this is that sometimes the needs of a mobile application in terms of data are kind of like different than the needs in terms of data of the web application. Probably the mobile application will need less data in each call, for instance. So that's why it might be wise to have this flexibility, so that each type of frontend has its own backend for frontend part that does all the aggregation and all that specific stuff. So that might be obviously a good idea. The downside of it is that it introduces complexity. You will say that if you think about the general picture of your entire system, it will probably also mean some code duplication. But if you really work in a microservices application where usually or theoretically you would use this type of architectural approach where you have very large applications, you have a lot of different teams working on the same app, and then basically each service would be an application on its own. So if you take a look at it from this perspective, I don't see really duplication as being a real problem, because each microservice might evolve differently. Cool. Let's see, do we have any other questions? No, I don't think we have any other questions. Okay, let's go here to the web folder and let's start by adding our Blazor application. So I will have this just as a Blazor web app right now, and here in this Blazor web app, how did I call it? Smartful.web. Okay, hopefully I typed everything correctly. I guess I did. Cool. Obviously I want to have here .NET 8, and I will start with authentication type none. And the reason I want to do this is because I want to go through the process of creating the authentication part in Blazor basically from scratch, because I think that's the best way or the easiest way to really understand how authentication works in this, let's call it, new Blazor. So I will leave here authentication type none. Now the interactive server mode, like how do we want to interactively, or how do we want to add interactivity to our components, where we want to add interactivity. And we have here obviously server WebAssembly or auto. In auto, theoretically, you could use both of these models. And the initial load will be done through the server interactivity, but then in the background, all the WebAssembly stuff or the DLS or what's needed will be downloaded in the browser, and it will switch then to browser interactivity or WebAssembly interactivity. Now, because I'm more familiar with the server part, and because I think this new model in which we have the server-side rendering, basically by default, everything is server-side rendered. I think it plays better kind of like with this idea of server interactivity. And if we can avoid having things in the browser, then I guess we can do that. But it wouldn't be wrong if you want to add WebAssembly interactivity. You can obviously totally do that, so it won't be any problem. And then how or where do we exactly want to add interactivity? This is a very important point actually, because for instance, the default here is per page or component. And in this case, we can add interactivity only on the different components where we want them to be rendered interactively. Sorry. But if we, for instance, want to have it global, like if I choose here global and if I choose here server, the Blazor app will be configured and it will basically work like a regular Blazor server application, because the entire interactivity for the application will be server. And it means that it will go everything through these WebSockets, like 100% exactly like we had in Blazor server. Now, for me, I think, obviously it's just an opinion right now, but I think that the best way to approach this new programming model with this new Blazor SSR would be to try as much as possible to leverage the server rendering or the server pre-rendering. Because that kind of like makes everything faster. It also solves a lot of problems that we traditionally have in single page applications with search engine optimization and other stuff like that. So I think that the main approach should be to try to leverage and make everything as server side rendered as possible, and add interactivity only where we actually need that. For instance, if I just need to load a list of some records of some data, I want to use this SSR mode to render that list initially. But if on that list I have a button, for instance, and when I click the button, I want something to happen, then I want to mark only my button component as interactive. So we add interactivity to, let's say, a small island of functionality. I think that would be, I would say, the default approach that I would try to have in most of my Blazor applications with this new programming model. As we'll see, probably this will not always be possible because we need to communicate through components, and in that case we need basically interactivity between them. But that's the reason why I wanted to do this live stream, to basically go through all this stuff together and find out exactly what can be challenging, for instance. But the default mindset and mentality would be to add interactivity only where we really need it. So this is why I will choose it like this. Here I have also the option to enlist in the Aspire orchestration, but I would like to create the Aspire orchestration just a little bit afterwards, so that we see exactly how that works. Cool. So I guess we would be able to go here. And I also don't include sample pages here in this application right now. So I'll just have here a home component that will say, hey, here's your application. And basically that's it. So, okay, so what I see here, let me see if you have any other comments. So don't forget, whenever you want to say something or have a question or just want to, I don't know, add something, or you don't agree with something that I say, just hit the chat and don't be shy about that. So getting some nostalgia, this reminds me when we built a social network using DD during the COVID lockdowns. Yes, that's the first time when I started live streaming. How often are you going to stream this project? Once a week. I will try to always do it on Sundays, but I can't promise that it will always happen on Sundays. But if it will not happen on Sunday, it will happen on Monday for sure. But each week, so it will be weekly. That's the plan for this one. Oh, Anton. Hello, Anton. Thank you very much for joining. So if you don't know, or I guess you can already see from the comment, we have a special guest here. We have Anton from Raw Coding. Welcome. By the way, just wanted to say that I guess a few months back, 2 months or something like this, 3 months, I had the opportunity to actually meet Anton Wieslander, and we did chat a lot about .NET and YouTube and things, and he's a great guy. Cool. And if you don't follow his channel, obviously go to his channel, subscribe, because he really has awesome content. Cool. Let's see what we have here. So first of all, we have this app CSS. I see we have here some things already, but I guess we'll replace them. And in the components, we have the layout, and that's actually the main layout, which in this case, it's basically just the body and the Blazor error UI. We'll come back here to this layout just a little bit later. So here, the first thing that you can notice when you start a new Blazor web app, like the new Blazor SSR, is that everything, like really everything, is a Razor component. So we don't have, like we had in Blazor server earlier, or in earlier versions, that we had this idea that, okay, you know, Blazor is great and we have this idea of interactivity, but in order for things to work, we actually also need some Razor pages. So we had this CSHTML, this host CSHTML, which was basically a Razor page that was kind of like the entire shell for the application. And then basically from there, we could go to different components. And when we needed to add authentication to Blazor server, that was kind of like one of the trickiest parts, I guess, because you needed basically the authentication to go through Razor pages. And why was that? Well, because in order to have authentication, you actually need the HTTP context. Now, the problem is that in the regular Blazor server or older Blazor server, the only time that you could actually rely on the HTTP context on not being null and having or having really data that you can rely on was when the request was coming into the application. And then the request basically, or this means that you could kind of like do something with that request only on Razor files. So that's why authentication needed to be part of Razor files, like CS HTML files. Now this all goes away with this new Blazor, because here everything is a component. So as we'll see today, because we'll work on the login today, we can definitely add authentication just using components, and everything is fine because everything is pre-rendered on the server by default. So we have a request at least when the page is loaded initially. And this means that we can rely on the HTTP context there. And that's kind of like a very, very important stuff. Okay, now in this app.razor, I see that I have here this link to my app CSS. And I think probably this default template, or although I'm not sure that this default template does it, but I want to actually add Bootstrap. So I won't spend really a lot of time on making a beautiful UI because that's the part that I hate, first of all. And I don't think that most of the people that kind of like will join this stream are interested in let's build UIs. For that, I guess there are dedicated channels that do streams on HTML, CSS and things like that. But what we want to concentrate instead is how do we want to achieve different things. So one of the things that I think I will need here in my application, and I basically will copy this from where I have posted or prepared it in advance, kind of like I would want to have Bootstrap, and I will kind of like use it from a CDN. And I think I will also, I think that would be actually okay, mostly. But let me also go to this, and you see that we have this Blazor web.js. This is kind of like a very important JavaScript, as we'll see just a little bit later. Cool. So here we have this one, and then we have this routes. And here there's basically the routing component that kind of like does something if you find some data, or it displays something else if you don't have any data. As seen here, we don't really have any authentication to this. So right now we don't have this cascading parameter, but as you'll see, the cascading stuff works a little bit different, or can work a little bit different in this new Blazor setup. So yeah, basically that's mostly what we have in this application, this standard application, and yeah, basically that that would be it. Let's yeah, the app settings to JSON, that's also something that we will need. And by the way, let me already, I have to go on a different screen for this. Auth drives me nuts. I hope this makes it easier. Yeah, Auth is seemingly not a very easy topic, but in this case we will be using Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. So we'll basically build our, let's say, we'll have our own identity platform. So we will not use a provider. Now, usually if you want to build a school management application, probably you will not want to log in with Facebook or log in with GitHub. You will just want to have a user store. Sorry for the ambulance. Well, I'm living on a busy street that's right next to the biggest hospital in the region, so there are some ambulances that will pass by. Cool. So what I was saying that yeah, we will use this Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity, because if you have your own school management application, you will want to have your own user store there. Obviously, you could theoretically use Azure AD or Azure Entra ID, which is the new name. But in this case, we'll just use our own users, because this will also help us understand better actually how do we do authentication here in Blazor. What's a cookie? How is the cookie? No, we will not use Duende. Duende kind of like is a paid service, and you would need to use Duende only if you want to kind of like build your own Azure Active Directory, or your own Auth0, or your own Okta. But we don't want to build our own Okta. We won't have other applications that will talk to our application. So our system, it's fully self-contained. So the moment that you would have, for instance, kind of like a system that would also, let's say, allow other systems from outside to communicate with it somehow, in that moment you would have to implement more complicated flows like OpenID Connect or OAuth 2. But for our needs right now, we don't need this, because we don't have other systems that will talk to our APIs. Our APIs will be internal only. So adding identity server here would be an overkill. It would be adding complexity without any type of justification. At least in my opinion. Obviously, if you don't agree with that, just let me know and give your argument, and we can definitely have a discussion. Okay, cool. We will have, I guess, to install some NuGet packages to get started. I think the very first thing that we want to implement is this login stuff. So probably we'll start with this. So let's add here some NuGet packages. Let me see if I have something here. I think it can be its own topic. Yeah, it definitely can be its own topic. But it said kind of like it depends. We need to choose the right tool for the job. Okay, so Anton says spot on. Well, coming from somebody that kind of like is very well known for his videos on authentication. Thank you very much. I'm glad that we agree on this topic. Otherwise, I probably would have to reformulate it. Okay, so cool. What packages will we need? So first of all, I think we will need this Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. Microsoft ASP.NET Core Core Identity. And for my Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity, we would need this Entity Framework Core. And this, by the way, will also install Entity Framework Core, so we don't need to install that package once again. Now, there is one thing, and I remember that I got this question at one of my certain videos on YouTube, and the thing is that, okay, usually, and even I in some earlier videos, I used to kind of like also install this package Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. Now, as you can see here, this package has this kind of like, okay, this package version is deprecated. And I got this question at a certain point, hey, but how should I use how can I use Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity right now, because this package is deprecated. Now, the thing is that this package was deprecated because the entire Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity functionality was moved in ASP.NET Core itself. So you have it by default. You don't have to install a package to configure and to use Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. Now, the only package that you need to add for this purpose is this Entity Framework Core, because this allows us to add the Entity Framework Core stores where we can basically create all our tables. But all the other functionality from Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity is already there in ASP.NET Core, so we kind of like don't need it. Cool, so then let's just install this Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. And then we'll also have to create migrations, and we'll also need to kind of like run those migrations and update the database. So Microsoft, what we'll need to install is these tools, and I think also the term SQL Server, obviously. Although I think SQL Server is also installed as a transitive dependency in the package that we installed previously. But yeah, let's be explicit about this. So let's just install that. Okay, and I think the other package that we will need will be the tools package. So let's also install that one. And I think right now there is no other package that we'll need for the functionality that we want to implement right now. So I guess we won't install other packages, but in future probably we'll need to work or create a lot of API clients. And for API clients, we will use Repit as a library to make easy client libraries for our APIs. So if we check the installed packages right now, we can see that, yeah, we have these. Okay, transitive packages. Okay, but the ASP.NET Core Identity package was not installed actually. Or what happened with that one? ASP.NET Core. Entity Framework Core. Oh, uninstall. I think I had a filter there. Yeah, that's why. Well, happens. Sorry for this. So yeah, we have these three packages, and as said, I think that for now, I think everything is done, and probably the this exclamation mark we have because probably one of the transitive dependencies is not on its latest version. Like I see, I have this user identity installed by default. I don't know, maybe let's just latest table. Okay, let's install this. So this package was or came basically with the default Blazor project that I have or that I created. I'm not sure exactly why, to be honest. Because I haven't configured any user identity or things like that. But yeah, let's see how are things going on. Okay, so I think people are still able to see me, which is good, I think. Cool. Now, the other thing that I wanted to do here, and since I'm here, I will also use this SQL Server Object Explorer in. And by the way, the reason why I use Visual Studio, this one, and not Rider, which I used most of the times during the previous year, is because to get Aspire to work, at least initially, you kind of like need, I would say, Visual Studio. And by the way, I have a preview version because you need a preview version, which was, I think, 17.8 or 0.9 or something like that. We can check this just in a second. So to make everything work with .NET Aspire, we will need to have this, I need to have this Visual Studio version. So yeah, I'm kind of like using it. Cool. So let's just add here a new database, add new database, and let's call this Smart School. Now, there is one thing, because initially what I wanted to do is I wanted to basically run an SQL server in Docker and have it orchestrated through Aspire. but unfortunately I was not able till now to get well, SQL Server work and or use it as an and orchestrate it with Aspire, because whenever Aspire wants to start and when the container starts, it just throws an error that it doesn't find an index, and I really don't. So it happens on container start. There's not a lot I can do about that, but yeah, I didn't manage to get it work. So if you know how to get or how to get SQL Server work and use it in an orchestrated way with .NET and in Aspire, maybe just hint me to some article or to some, I don't know, GitHub issue. I didn't find anything on that one. Cool. So now we have this database. Now the other thing that I will do, which I will go to other things that I have prepared for it, and in the meantime, obviously, if you have any question, just feel free to ask, or if you want to add something. So I will have here, we'll probably end up having kind of like one database per each service. So we will not share one database with all the services. That's something that I think kind of like defeats the purpose of having microservices or even service-oriented applications. So we'll have databases that are different for each microservice. And we'll have to add these connection string here. So let me come back to my application. So it should be something like this. This should be the database. I hope everything should be fine with that. So we don't need the app settings.json anymore. We can just even close it. Cool. Now, how should we start? Let's start from the front end part. Okay, so here what I would like to do, and in this case for now I will just have a login, for instance, in my this whole idea of identity management stuff, because we'll need to also be able to edit and assign roles to users. But what I would like to do here is I would like to have a dedicated layout for authentication, and let's add here a new Razor component, and we'll call this Razor component Auth layout. So that would be once again our Auth layout. And one other important thing is we'll need to add some CSS here. And for this, I have actually, or I use, really, I find this extension very, very nice. There's an extension that is called Blazor. It's developed by Jimmy Engstrom. And this extension is really great. And one of the great things that it can do, if you need an isolated CSS file, it's as easy as right-clicking the component, create isolated CSS. If you need isolated JavaScript, you can just right-click and create an isolated JavaScript file, and everything also will be initialized correctly to have this isolated JavaScript. So this extension is really cool. It also has a lot of different refactoring things that you can use, like for instance, extract using into the imports CS or extract code behind file. Really, I find this extension very, very useful. So it's called Blazor. Let me just paste it here. If anybody has the link or finds the link to it in the Visual Studio Marketplace, maybe just post it also in the chat, and people will probably appreciate that. So is it compulsory to use identity server for authentication in a microservice application? So we are not using identity server. We're just using the Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity features that we have in ASP.NET Core. And you need those in order to be able to authorize requests, for instance. So you can't really, or theoretically you can, because you can write your own, I don't know, when the request comes in, your own middleware to check if, I don't know, something, then return on unauthorized. But from my point of view, that would be the way that kind of, or this wouldn't be a, let's say, engineering way of doing this. So a more well-engineered way of doing this is having basically a structure and everything set up correctly, so that you can use roles, you can use policies, you can define custom policies and things like that. So yeah, we'll use this type of features, and you kind of like need them, but we will not use identity server. So we will not use it. So once again, we need identity server or something similar when we want to have more extensive or complicated scenarios where other services, other external applications will talk or will need to use my APIs. In those cases, we need to implement some flows like OpenID for authentication and Auth for authorization. And those flows have very exact specifications. There are RFCs for that, where everything is described exactly how it should be implemented. So we won't do that because we don't need this. Our system is kind of like stands on its own. There aren't any external systems that will be or are planned to basically work with our APIs. So we don't need the whole identity server stuff. Cool. Now in the out layout, as said here, I have already prepared some stuff. The first thing that I would like to do with this layout, because this right now is just a regular component. Now to make this component be a layout, what we need to do is have here inherit, and it should inherit this layout component base. And this makes it a layout, and it allows you this opportunity to use this body directive. And now the other thing is, because as we will introduce authentication to our application and also very basic authorization at the beginning, like user needs to be authenticated, otherwise user needs to be redirected to the login page. But the login page and its layout, they should be able, or we should be able to kind of like access them also anonymously. So using Microsoft ASP.NET Core authorization. Sorry. Now, here's once again this Blazor extension. Like if you right click here, you have this move namespace into imports. And this would move the namespace from my file to the imports.razor, and it will actually keep my application. But why didn't it do this? It didn't really do this. So, or am I missing something? I think I don't see it. Seems not to be here. Cool. So as it always happens, kind of like this time it failed. But you can definitely extract this, for instance, if you want in a code behind file. Extract to component. But where was it? Wasn't it with the right click? That's actually a very nice feature, because if I want, for instance, only this markup, and I think we'll be doing this a lot during these live streams. And okay, maybe here I have just one line, but maybe I have 50 or 100 lines, and I want to extract this away. So I want to create a new component. What you can do here is extract a component, and it will create automatically for you a new component. It will place all the markup in that component, and instead of this, it will add your component name. And that's also very, very cool. Saves you really a lot of time. This extension is, from my point of view, really, really nice. Cool. But now, okay, we inherit from layout component base. Here, in this case, I think we won't need any code behind in this layout. Let's see, are there people still watching here? I think there are. Okay, cool. So I have some markup already prepared here. Obviously the prepared markup and then the CSS files, they will probably not work as expected, because that kind of like happens a lot. Or I expect this to happen, because why not? This is how live streams go. Cool. So here's some very, very basic CSS for this login, and for the out layout we have a lot of different containers and sections and basically two different columns. Also, we make your school smarter. Let's change the text here, because it's called right now Smart School, and let's also change here the text, and we should be fine, I guess, with this. Okay, so this is the layout. And here you see that here is the body. So here is basically where our login form will come in. Sorry, once again. Maybe I need to drink something. Well, I'm not sure exactly where to move my head so that everything is visible correctly in the live stream. Maybe just also make it smaller. That would help, I guess. Hello, also Bojan Pavlovic joined. Thank you, Bojan, for joining. Cool. I'm curious, is anybody watching on LinkedIn? If you're watching on LinkedIn, can you please just hit a comment and let me know that you're watching from LinkedIn? And I don't know, maybe just let me know from where you are watching. That would be awesome and great. And also for people that have missed it, I just, as in the beginning, I have mentioned, I will also start my own newsletter that will be totally different than the newsletter that you are accustomed with. In this case, if you are newer to the stream and just want to subscribe to the newsletter, you'll also find some information there, how this newsletter is different. Just subscribe and yeah, the first issue or the first newsletter number will happen this Thursday, and my newsletter will be bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks on Thursday you will receive some very, very nice stuff regarding .NET, Azure and software architecture. So YouTube, unfortunately, I got to run, just come to say hello. Okay, Bojan, have a great evening. But you know what? Now I want to check this. So let me just go on LinkedIn because I'm curious. It's the very first time that I'm basically streaming on LinkedIn. So I don't really know what to expect from that. Okay, so I see at least one person here watched on LinkedIn at a certain point, but I didn't see the comment. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know exactly where to look on LinkedIn to see how many are watching from here, but if you're watching from LinkedIn, really, thank you very much. So going back here to my regular stuff, will the source code after each live stream be available? That's actually a very good question, and I needed to talk about this basically at the start, but thank you very much for asking, Zachary. So regarding the source code, yeah, that's kind of like important. Now I did really think about this a lot, and I have come to the decision that the source code after each live stream will be shared with all CodeWrinkles members. So in order to get access to the source code after each live stream, you need to go on the YouTube channel on the CodeWrinkles and join the membership. And you can join it on whatever level you want. Like the source code for live streams will be provided to all members. The source code for the regular videos that I do, that source code will be provided only for ambassador members. So if you want to get access to the source code for the videos, the regular videos, then you need to subscribe on the ambassador tier. But if you want to get access to the source code for this live stream or for all lives or for all future live streams, let's say, I will share it with all CodeWrinkles members. So you will just have to join the membership and you will be able to actually get the source code after each live stream. Cool. So thank you very much, Zachary, for asking about that. Cool. Okay. So now we have this login here, and yeah, we have here the body. So here is where actually the form will come in. Now the only other thing that we need to do is to create a login component. Now the way I would like to structure my components, now here we had already a main layout and I don't want to move things around. But the way that I would like to do this in this application is more a feature-based approach for this web app. And what does this mean is that I will basically create a folder here and I will call it, I don't know, features, something like this. And I would like to actually create all my features there, and I will have subfolder and subfolders for specific features, and I will try to put all the code that belongs to a certain feature basically in that folder. With some exceptions that I don't really agree with, let's go vertical slices all the way and put everything in one file, one folder, whatever. I think that's not optimal for bigger applications, for teams, for that's kind of like not optimal. but usually we'll tend to put everything as close as possible together. So I am interested in it because you are using pre-configured CSH and passing it, and I am shadow coding this with you. Okay, yeah. So basically what I have here only for the authentication layout is a little bit different. For most of the other parts that I will have with regular components, I will just have regular bootstrap and classes or CSS classes that I create myself in isolated CSS. So basically for this live stream, I kind of like did a lot of preparation, meaning that I have only coded basically a lot of functionality of the application, and I will kind of like just reuse the HTML that I have used there. Because it would be kind of like, it would take us just one live stream to maybe code only the login, for instance, if I would have to write everything right now. But yeah, obviously, as said, all members or Code Wrinkles members will receive the source code after each live stream. Okay, so this means that the next thing that we need to do here in this features folder is, so here's one important trick about Blazor, this imports.razor. Actually, this is not really Blazor specific. That's kind of like specific more for the regular ASP.NET Core MVC and stuff, is that we will need this kind of imports.razor. Also in other folders where we want to have Razor components. And we'll basically need to copy everything that we have here, because we'll need all this type of stuff. And I will go to this features folder, and the next thing that I will do here is I would add let's just add a new Razor component, and I will call this also imports.razor. Now in this component, obviously it's not a real component because it's just an imports file, and I'll just paste everything that we have here. And this makes all the components stuff and everything that we will need also available in all the subfolders and files and components that we'll have in this feature folder. So that's kind of like very important. Johan, also have a great day. I know you're still celebrating Thanksgiving, so thank you very much for joining. By the way, happy Thanksgiving or final Thanksgiving Day for all the viewers from the US. Forgot that, sorry. I really apologize for that. Good. So now that we have this this folder with this imports, now the first thing is, so we will have a bunch of functionalities that will be related, I will say, to identity and access management. So I think I'll create a subfolder here that I'll call identity and access management, and then here I will still have one other subfolder, because here we'll have probably well, managing accounts, managing roles, managing students, managing other type of accounts, and so on and so forth. So what I would like to do here is I will have a new folder, and this folder I will call, let's just call also account. And here in this account, I will create here add to the term, and here it will be a Razor component. As said, we can add authentication by just simply using regular Blazor components here. So let's have this login dot, actually login is enough. We can just have it like this. Okay, so now we have this login component. Obviously, this component will contain a little bit more logic. And now that we are saying this, so in this component, we'll actually need to perform the login itself. So one thing that we need to do, but let's finish with the markup first for this entire feature. And for this markup, what I will do here is I will add here an edit form. Now, this edit form right now, it has a lot of errors because I'm binding to different things that we don't have yet in this component, but we'll come back and solve this issue. Okay, but the idea is that we just have here some very basic stuff. Like we have here this edit form. We'll come back to it and how it works when we'll wire it up with the code behind. It's basically a built-in component in ASP.NET Core that allows you to kind of like use and use this form posting in a very smart way, and we'll see about that. That's kind of like really nice. But then we just have here kind of like a first name, a last name, and a password here. But the main idea that we'll do here right now to keep things very simple, so we'll set an initial password ourselves when we register a user, because user registration will be done basically from admins or by admins directly from the application. So this application, as it is a school management system, so you won't be able as a user to go directly on a register and register yourself there. So the school will need to kind of like do this for you. And we can just assume that they will set an initial password, and you will have to change the password when you first log in. So that's kind of like the idea that we would like to have in mind, and that's why we just create the login, and we'll do some very hacky workaround for the very first time that we do a login. I will create a super admin for myself so that we are able to kind of like log in there. But for now, basically, that would be the markup part. Yeah, so basically right now, there is one other thing that we would need to do here is, first of all, we'll need to specify a page because this needs to be obviously routable. So a page, and in this page, and I don't want to have this default /account/identity or /identity/account/login that you have in ASP.NET Core. I really hate that. So just why can't it be simple? I want to have it login, and that's it. Not some weird navigation stuff that kind of like is a legacy from the time we actually used areas in ASP.NET Core. Cool. And the other thing that we need to specify here in our application is I want for this component to not use the main layout that is configured in route. If you go to routes, you see that we say here the default layout is the main layout. So my authentication component, where is it? Login. So my login component, I don't want to use that layout, but I want it to use the Auth layout instead. So what we'll do here is specify layout, and the type, it will be Auth layout. Obviously this is not reachable right now, but I think it should give me the opportunity to add using. Okay, but I don't like where it did add this using, so let me just go on top. Let's give it a little bit of space to add other usings when it will need them. Okay, so we'll have this, and we'll also need to allow anonymous access to this form when we'll have authentication. So here we'll have attribute, and here we'll have not braces but brackets, allow anonymous. Cool. So that would be, I guess, the basic setup for this one. Now, to be able to actually add authentication and authorization to my application, there are some things that we need to do. But even before we actually do this, okay, sorry. I'm just moving pieces around here, but I hope you can still see everything. Let's maybe make, okay, like this. Cool. Okay, so let's maybe first add Aspire orchestration to this. So one way that you can actually do this is just right-clicking here and then add to the term, and it should be, where was it? Aspire orchestration. Oh, I don't see it. .NET Aspire orchestration support. I don't know why didn't I see it. So here I need, or we need to basically define some stuff like the project name, and I will call it, let's but I guess they will give it their own name when we create this, and then the location, and I guess actually we should And they also say here they will create a smart school app host.cs project, smart school service default.cs project, and I guess that would be okay. So now we have done this. Now the thing is that while we have added this orchestration support here, let me go. So first of all, this we have these two projects here. Now the first thing that we do here, or that kind of like this did it by default, but when we will be adding new projects to our solution and to our orchestration, we'll come here and add the projects manually. Now here basically we add just a reference to this project that needs to be orchestrated with .NET Aspire. We'll also need to give it a name here, and the name will just call it the web, because this will be our web app part, or the front end of our system. And basically that's not much else going on here. Now if we go back to our smart web app application, we'll see that here in the program.cs there were some things that were added by Aspire, like this add service defaults. Now this add service defaults is where a lot of the Aspire magic happens. And if you take a look, this is actually part of this, like here you can configure the open telemetry, how it is configured. And this is all the default configuration that .NET Aspire is basically adding and is using. But you can come here and then uncomment things to add additional stuff, or maybe if you want to do things a little bit differently, you can do things a little bit differently. Like if you want to give different, for instance, endpoint names for your health checks, you can do this here. And this is actually the method that we have here in this service defaults extensions. So this is basically the class that we were looking at. And the good thing here is that kind of like this gives you also the power, if you want to add your own extensions to this, you can then just come and to add your own extensions, because you might want to add your application support for different other stuff that is not there by default in .NET Aspire. So things are kind of like very, very nice from this perspective. Now, the thing is that right now, basically, if I go back here to this program, we see that we have this add service default, which kind of like uses this Aspire orchestration. And yeah, basically that's it more or less with it. So theoretically now, as you can see, the starting project for the solution has changed to run the host. And the whole idea is that right now, if you run the application, instead of my Blazor application being ran, theoretically, it will run the .NET Aspire dashboard, let's call it that way. Obviously, I can't do this because I have build error in my login. Okay, understood. You can start the program. Okay, let's then go back to login. Theoretically, I think I should have added this this support from the beginning. Now, let's go back here and fix the problems. Now, the first problem, if we take a look here, we have this kind of like, we named this login form, which would be, well, the form or the view model for the login part. And for this, we'll kind of like use a class for that. And let's make it, I guess we can even make it private. So we'll have here a private class. And let's call this login model. And in this class, we'll have a public string email. Actually, I guess we can even let's have it by default on string.empty. Okay, I'm not sure if this is the best way, but at least for now. Okay, what's the problem with you? I guess the problem is still complaining because of this one. Okay, and the other thing that I would like to have, let's just maybe, I don't know, try to get rid of all the errors. So what we will need afterwards is public. Well, I guess we can have it private. Or no, the problem here is I don't think that that was the problem. We'll check this later, but let's have this here. Actually, this will be a parameter, so a parameter needs to be public. And we'll see what type of parameter this would be. Let's have this login model, and let's call it login form. And actually, we'll default this to be a new instance. Okay. So now, theoretically, if we go one step further, we see that this login form, okay, we don't have an error there anymore. Now, the attribute that we'll need actually here is we want, so the way this works with this edit form and this enhanced form posting feature in this new Blazor is that supply parameters from form. So the form will supply us the parameter for this method. Now, the other thing that we will need here is this method perform login that we have here. And this is the method that will be triggered when a login happens. So what we can do here is we have public, let's make it async, task of, no, it's actually just a task. I don't think we will return something here because we will probably navigate away. Perform login. Now the thing is that when we perform the login and we have this edit form, what we'll get here is an edit context. So we'll get as a parameter. So I would also like to navigate away after the login. So we'll do an inject here. So let's maybe inject. And what we need to inject is navigation manager. And here I have really something that I would like to ask your advice. So this here inject basically is a field. Now, usually in most of the application where I inject services or, well, fields, I use this naming with underscore. However, kind of like, I don't know, but here in Blazor, it seems a little bit weird to me to use this underscore notation, because sometimes you might want to use some of the fields maybe to bind to something. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it just seems to me that it looks awkward. So what I tend to do is just skip that underscore notation for fields. So I'm not sure if this is a good thing or not. So please let me know what you think about that. Okay, so we have this navigation. So when I perform the login, so when I am ready to that, what I would like to do is navigation dot, but no. Did I provide a name? Yes, navigation manager. But yeah, let's keep this shorter. Just navigation. And then here we have this navigate to, and here in this navigate to, for now I just want to navigate to the home page. So that would be the navigation. Okay, so now theoretically, if we go back here, we see that to the term. Perform login is also, it doesn't really have an error anymore. And I think these errors here, they are still coming from this login form problem. Okay, so in this login model, if we go back to it, I also want to have a password. So let's have a public string password get set. Let's empty. Obviously, I also need to spell it correctly. That would be important, I guess. Now we can even kind of like do some stuff here for some very, very basic validation. So first of all, we want this to be required. Obviously, I guess we need to add the using here. Using data annotations. Yeah. And the next thing that I want to have here is that this needs to be an email address, and I want to have maybe also a display name, and but just display, not the name. And here name equals email. Okay, and then I have here the password. First of all, it should be required. Then here, I guess we can just use this data type, and here we can that kind of like uses an enum, and here it would be password. Okay, and then have a display to be a password. Okay, what did it happen here, or what? Obviously I spelled it wrong. Still wrong. Cool. Okay, so now we have also some things for the basic validation. And okay, so now we have this login form, and now we don't have exceptions anymore, because right now we have all the values that we have here. Okay, now the important thing here is that we have here the input text, and we bind the value of the login form, and this is how we can kind of like communicate when we post this form, what it will happen. I don't know, maybe I really don't know. Sorry, a little bit. Trying to arrange a little bit of stuff here. Okay, I don't really know where to put my head exactly here. Maybe make it even smaller, because you don't really need to see me a lot. Maybe something like this. And yeah. Okay. So, are you still there? Do I still have viewers? Because I don't see any comments here. Or did you all die because of boredom? I hope that you are still okay. Cool. Okay, so now I was saying here that we have this bind value, and this is how kind of like we bind to the form, to this login form. And basically when we post the form, as we'll see later, we also give it a form name, and we'll post, and when we'll post this form, actually we'll say that that Blazor web.js JavaScript file that you saw mentioned in the app.razor, it kind of like intercepts the fact that we want to do a post, and instead of kind of like doing a full post, it will just do like a plain old school Ajax call, a post to this endpoint or for this form. Now Blazor, based on this name of the form, will kind of like match the fact that it will need to kind of like post to this component, and it will trigger basically this perform login method. And that's really kind of like a very cool stuff, because you can work with forms without adding interactivity. So you can work with forms being in fully and 100% SSR environment. So that's kind of like the good stuff, or one of the very good things that I think are there in this new Blazor. So Zahari, Coke being the legal drinkable substance, of course. It's actually Pepsi Max. So yeah, but yeah, some things I cannot give up. Some things I can give up, and I already did, but some things I cannot give up, at least for now. But I also drink more water recently, so just be aware of that. Cool. So yeah, this is how this login form works right now. So now that we don't have, okay, or do we have errors? Where do we have? This error is because the last time that we wanted to run this application kind of like didn't really run well. So let me just run now, and now new try, we'll see the Aspire host actually starting, and our application should be there in the host, and we are able to kind of like work with it. So let's see how this shapes up. By the way, I'm not sure exactly why, but I once again want to thank you very much for tuning in. This is till now my most popular live stream ever. So till now I never had, I think, more than 20 concurrent viewers on a live stream, and here I guess right now we are 70, but I think there were also more, so really I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Also make sure to also subscribe to the channel if you are for the first time here, and also join as a member. can be on the lowest level if you want to get the source code after the live stream. That's the way that we'll provide this, or no, the source code. So theoretically, okay, it started, it's just slower. So the other problem when kind of like I'm doing this on my, let's say, regular laptop with live streaming and everything, and basically everything is slower when I run here, but let me just do this. So this is the application right now. I have switched on dark mode. So you see that because we have added, or it was added automatically in our case, the project to the Aspire orchestration, now by default, we can see it here. And for instance, if we click here, we'll see that we will get automatically here to Hello World, which is our application. Now, right now we haven't kind of like completed this redirect to login functionality, so we just see the home page. But the idea is that now, one very cool thing, or the cool thing about this, is that kind of like one of the pain points when I was working in projects that were kind of like similar to microservices was that you never could see logs or traces or things like that. So, or you needed to use the external systems for that, and not all customers wanted to pay for that. They wanted to pay only for the production. So it was pain to debug things. But now here you have traces. Like for instance, you see that I had this request for the web, and you see that this is basically the trace for that request and how it unfolded. And when we'll actually further down the line have several microservices behind, and when we make a request to a certain component, we'll have in this trace really the history of all the requests that were made throughout our all services to actually get and fulfill that specific request. And that is really, really cool from my point of view. So traces, this is one very important stuff here. And the other stuff here is the logs that we can have here. We can have the structured logs. So you see all the logs here. You can obviously even look into them. Since they are structured, if we will use logging and structured logging in our application later, you can just filter here and do a lot of stuff, but you can see the logs per each project that were generated. If you have containers, like if you run something in the container, at a certain point during this series of live streams, we'll be having also probably RabbitMQ, and RabbitMQ will run in a Docker container. So in that case, we'll see the RabbitMQ in the containers list, and we'll see the logs for that specific container. We'll be able to choose it and see the logs from there. But theoretically here we can even add in Aspire executables, and that's something that I'm also still investigating. But the idea is that you could write, for instance, one of your microservices in Node.js and still have it orchestrated with Aspire. So that's really, really powerful. Like having this control plane for your development environment when you have a services-oriented setup is really, really cool and nice. So that's kind of like how Aspire works here. So once again, if we go to our project, here we open this and our project opens. And basically also debugging works. So if I set a breakpoint, then it will be hit. So debugging works. It's kind of like great. Cool. Now let me just close this. So we see that the orchestration till now is successfully working. So right now, theoretically, what we need to do is start working and implementing the the login functionality, which means we will need to implement all the stuff regarding identities. So let's see to catch up with some questions here. So you okay. How do you become a member? Is it on YouTube or Patreon? It is on YouTube. So right under the video, you should see a button that it's a big button with join. It says join on them. And if you click on the join button, then you will see the different memberships tiers and what they actually include. But as said, you can just choose the lowest tier, and you will also get the source code after each live stream. If your frontend is a regular SPA like React or Angular, it will also show up under executable. Theoretically, yes, but I'm still investigating this. So my main focus was Blazor and how can we do things with Blazor right now. But from what I have seen till now, basically the idea is that when you create an executable, you basically create a runnable bash that runs something from your folder. So basically you will run there npm run or serve or ng serve or whatever, and basically that will be your executable. And theoretically, yes, you could add this, and the same way you could even add Java applications and things like that. But when I get to this, I will surely do some videos on that. So does Aspire work with React and .NET Web API? So as said, for the React part, so if you have the Web API template with React, then basically that React will also be served from your Web API. So I would say that it should work basically or more or less out of the box. If you have React like totally standalone, then you'll probably have to kind of like create an executable for that. So so that it provides Aspire a way to understand exactly how it should run your specific executable. But as said, this is something that I still need to investigate a lot, so it's not done yet. Cool. So as said, the next step would be to go back to the backend part of this login functionality, where we need to implement everything around ASP.NET Core Identity. But I have really talked a lot until now, so what I will need right now is a short break. So what I will suggest you do is also take this break. Don't run away. Don't go away, because some nice stuff will come afterwards, because we'll implement the whole authentication part and understand how authentication works, what we need to create for that. And I guess that would be very, very, very important. Also during the break, I will just change the screen, so it will not be this one with Visual Studio and the code, but it will be just a different screen. But basically the background music is still here, so the stream itself is actually still live, so we're not breaking anything. We're just going on a break. The break, I assume it will be around 10 minutes, so I'll be back in around 10 minutes. Till then, if you have any other questions, just leave them in the chat, and yeah, we'll catch up in 10 minutes. So hello there, and I am back from this break. Let me see to catch up in the chat here. I see here, okay, I build systems integration using Azure Function Apps. Do you know if they work so in Aspire? As far as I know, they are not yet supported, but they will come very soon. So definitely this will be a scenario that will be fully supported in .NET Aspire. And then I see this other comment here. The challenge is deployment. Currently, Aspire is able to create an Azure YAML that AZD CLI can use for deployment. It only supports Azure Container Apps. Yes, that's correct. It just supports container apps, but they have, I think, already a working experimental version with Kubernetes. So I think that's definitely something that will come. But the one other thing important about the Aspire and the deployment like it is right now is that you can actually like with .NET publish, just publish a manifest file, and that manifest file will basically be a JSON file that will contain all your bindings, really everything that you need. And that would be pretty well easy, I would say, to kind of like integrate with I don't know, maybe DevOps pipelines that you might have, because really you have all the configuration there. And yes, right now automatically you can just basically publish it to Azure Container Apps. So that's definitely true. So if you have any other question, just feel free to just don't be shy and use the chat. That's why the chat is here for. And before we go further with the login functionality, the other thing that I wanted to share, if you joined later, is that I will be also starting a newsletter that will be fairly different compared to the other newsletter that exists right now. So here is the link where you can subscribe to the newsletter, and the first issue of the newsletter will happen on Thursday. It will be bi-weekly, so every second Thursday you will receive this newsletter from me, which will be, once again, fairly different compared to what other newsletters are out there, at least in the .NET community. And that's why I think it might be worth subscribing to it, so feel free to just subscribe. And the other thing is, as a question, if you want access to the source code after each live stream, because this will be a series in which we'll kind of like, we'll go deeper and deeper and do a lot of stuff, like also async communication and gRPC communication and things like that. So if you want access to the source code, make sure you join the Code Wrinkles membership. Like if you join as a member, even on the lowest tier after each live stream, I will share the code like I have left it when we finish the live stream with you, so you can basically check it and have access to it any time. Just check the membership tab on the Code Wrinkles YouTube channel. Once you become a member, you will see that there is a tab which is called membership, and on that tab I will always announce exactly how and where you can get the source code. So that kind of like would be also very, very important. And yes, I guess we are ready to continue. Cool. So we are right now on our login part. Now, the first thing that we need here in order to make everything work is that we will need to kind of like add authentication and authorization and everything regarding ASP.NET Core identity to our application. So what we'll need for that is basically we need to configure some stuff here. So first of all, let me just go here on this one, and on the root. Also, please let me know if you can hear me and if everything is okay. That would be totally helpful. Okay, so yeah, okay, I want to create a new folder here, and I will name this folder data. And by the way, I will not create for now kind of like different projects for a lot of stuff. As we want to build some microservices, they should be fairly small, so we should be able to keep everything fairly good together. So yeah, I will just use the DB context basically here, and I will create a new class, and I will call this app.db context. And this DB context class will inherit identity DB context. Obviously, we'll need an import for that using. Okay. And then I just want to have the constructor, and here DB context options. And for now, I guess that's everything that we need in this DB context, because it has all the, well, DB sets and things that we need for identity. It has it here, so we don't really need to care about that. Now, there is one other thing that usually in all applications happens like this, and I want to kind of like start from scratch doing or organizing my project accordingly. So I will add here a new folder, and in this folder I will call extensions. Let's rename. I have to also spell it X. I think right now, no. Oh my god. Like this. Sorry for all this stuff. And there are actually, well, when I think with extensions, there are usually several types of extensions that we will probably use here. And one type of extensions that I always have in my project, mostly a folder called framework extensions. And here probably right now I would need an extension for the web application builder. So I will add here a new class, and I'll call this web application builder extensions. Okay, as this will hold extension methods, it will be a static class, and in this class we'll have a public static. It will return a web application builder, and I'll call this configure identity. Okay, now as part of configuring identity, there is kind of like this stuff that we need to create. We need to get the connection string, and we have added the connection string earlier to the app settings. Okay, sorry, because I forgot, this is an extension method on this web application builder, and let's call it builder. Okay, and what we can do is return builder. Okay. Now, the reason why I create this extension method is because then in the program.cs file, I will just call builder configure identity, and then everything will be done. So that's kind of like very convenient. I think it will help us keep our program.cs file clean. So var builder, first we need to get the connection string from the builder configuration, and I have named my connection string default. Okay, and then what we'll need to do here is because that's actually one very important thing, and the important thing is that we will have in this new Blazor SSR, we'll have components that are statically rendered, and we'll have components that are interactively rendered. And as I have set up this project to use basically server interactivity, it will use these WebSockets like it was used in Blazor server. Now, this brings a problem here. And the problem is that at some points, for instance, where we are in a full server rendered or pre-rendering, in those cases, we can use the regular DB context, right? Now, the problem is that if we are in, components that are not, or that are interactively rendered, and by the way, I have published a video just last week on this topic, so you might want to check the channel and watch it, because I go in more depth there about this topic. But the idea is that in that case, it's not a good idea, it's really bad to use the regular DB context, because the regular DB context is added as scoped. So we will end up probably having the need in our application to be able to use both the DB context and the DB context factory. And in that case, there is a caveat or a thing that we need to be attentive to. And this is, for instance, that we need to add the DB context factory first, because that will add the DB context options as singleton. And then we can add the DB context, or we can use the same options when we use the identity. So what I'll do here is builder services.add DB context factory, and I will provide my app DB context. And then I will have here obviously the options, auth.use SQL server, and I will provide the connection string. And now that we have added this DB context factory, we can also add the regular DB context because we might also need it. So it would be builder.services.add DB context. And obviously the regular DB context that is called will be used by the identity services. So that's one of the reasons why we need it, have DB context. But also identity would have edited by default, I guess. So, but yeah, let's be explicit about what our application needs right now. And here it would be kind of like the same options use SQL server, and then just to be used the connection string that we had earlier. Okay. And then this is where we kind of like start to add the identity stuff. So builder.services.add identity core. I guess this is the one that we will need. Now we will just use the regular identity user right now. If we need to customize it at a later point, we'll customize it at a later point. But right now we'll just use this regular identity user. And then obviously here we also get some options. Here there are different options that I actually want to configure, and the options that I want to configure are regarding the password because I want to keep it simple. So my goal here right now is not to create complex password policies so that I can use some default passwords for this application, but obviously when doing this in a real application you would kind of like require more secure passwords than what I will do now. So the first thing that I want is require digit. I want this to be false. By default, it's true. Then ops password, but this time not require digit. This time require length. And I want the required length to just be 5. Let's keep it simple. And then options opt require lowercase. I guess I'll set them both to false. Also the uppercase one I'll set to false. And I also want require non-alphanumeric also set to false. Now there is one other important thing for identity, and this regards claim, is I want, for instance, a certain claim to be regarded as the claim I want the claim that uniquely identifies the user in my system to have something to do with my system, not the default name that we have in identity. So what I will have here is options, and I will have here on the claims identity, and here user ID claim type, and I will set this to be smart school ID, because that's the name of our application. Cool. Now that we have configured the password policies, one other thing that we will need here is to work with roles. So we'll have this add roles, and here this is also generic, and this should be of type identity role. So this is the default role that we have in Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. And sorry, not here. We also want to be able to sign the users in. So add sign in manager. I guess this is the only one here. And last but not least, after everything is done, I want to add entity framework, add entity framework stores. Here we need to provide the appdb context. And I guess that's mostly it what we need for this one. Good. So this is kind of like just configure identity. So this is just configuring the identity part. Let's keep up here to see if there is anything new in the chat. Okay, so hi everyone. A primitive question maybe, but do you think it makes sense for someone who currently works as a QA automation engineer to learn Blazor and microservices? I think the idea itself is a good one, and it's a workable one, but I think that what's wrong with this question is actually that it focuses on the wrong thing. So if you kind of like just want to turn from QA automation to development, you don't need to kind of like learn microservices. That's the last thing that you need to learn. You just need to learn some basic programming practices. Obviously, as a QA automation, you already know some stuff, so you already have a very solid baseline. So what my advice would be to not start with microservices, but start to understand how you can create a regular REST API first. How you can then add authentication, add authorization to that REST API, like understanding the ASP.NET Core framework, then maybe diving or digging deeper into the C# language. So try to learn programming, not to learn microservices. Microservices is something that we learn, or that you should learn only after you are very familiar with kind of like programming in general, let's say. So yeah, that would be my advice, but it totally makes sense. And yeah, I actually actively mentored a lot of people on becoming software developers, from dancers, cooks, bartenders, or other jobs that they were doing. They are now developers. A lot of them are already seniors. So I kind of like did this or helped people a lot on this type of journey. So definitely that's something that you could do. You also have a straight advantage being a QA automation engineer. So definitely should be doable and feasible for you. Okay, then some responses sound perfect, everything perfect. Okay, cool. I'm glad that you are still here, everybody. Still there's a little bit much silence here. So just remember, whenever you have something to add or just want to say something, yeah, just get in touch and to write in the chat. Use the chat. That's why we have this chat here. Cool. And that would be very important. Okay, so let's go back to this other stuff. Now, okay, so if we go back right now to our program.cs, there are some things that we kind of like need to do. We can come here. So here we add the Razor components. Now, one thing that we need to do is builder dot configure identity. So it's exactly the method, calling the method that we have just created. Now, the other thing is that besides the fact that we have created this configure identity, which configures the identity setup or the identity engine in ASP.NET Core, we also need to configure the authentication, like how do we want to sign the users in. So this is what we need to do next. And for this, we'll actually need, let's create here a new class, because this will be an extension on the iService collection. So iService collection extensions, and this would also be a static one. And the first method that we'll use here is public static iService collection, because we'll return a collection in case at some point we'll want to kind of like chain different things together. We'll just return it. Let's call this configure authentication. And obviously this is also on the this iService collection, and let's call this services. Okay, and let's just return the services. Get rid of the error. Cool. Now, there is one thing that we need to add, and this is because of the fact that we haven't configured the project to come with identity by default. There are reasons for which I don't like this, because they kind of like scaffold you all the components for identity for really everything, and that's something that I don't need. It's just clutter. And then it's kind of like easier to learn and understand how authentication works. Now, one thing that's important that has changed in Blazor is that we can add cascading authentication state directly through a service, so that we are not really in a need to use the cascading authentication state component on the routes.razor. So first of all, we'll use these services. Now, for things to work, there is one other thing with this authentication state provider. It needs a mechanism to actually check regularly if the user is still authenticated or not. And this is kind of like a very, very important step. And to do this, we'll kind of like need to introduce a new service that will kind of like do this. So I will, since it will be a service and it is clearly a service that's dedicated or it's only just for this web application, I will create a new folder here on the root and I will call it services. Now in this services folder, let's add a new class. And let's call this class revalidating auth state. Or auth state revalidation. That name is a little bit shorter. Now, this class needs to implement certain service and well, a certain class that's provided by ASP.NET Core by Blazor, and this one is revalidating identity server authentication state provider. Ooh, long name, but that's kind of like what we need to inherit here. So what we need to do, because this is an extra class, and we'll kind of like need to implement a method for this revalidation. Okay, and okay, here in this revalidation interval, we need to specify a time span, basically of minutes or seconds or whatever you want, on which or in which this service should trigger and revalidate the authentication state. So what I'll have here is a time span from, let's have it from minutes, and let's set it to, I don't know, 20 minutes maybe, something like this. So this means that every 20 minutes the authentication state basically set up from Blazor will check with this implementation of my service to see exactly how it needs to basically do the validation and the revalidation. What's the error? There is no argument given that corresponds. This kind of like needs some stuff. This needs some stuff, and I think we can use here primary constructors if I know how to use them. Now what I will use here is I will need a private read only. What is happening? That's not because I don't need fields. So I will have I service scope factory. Let's call this service scope factory. And due to primary constructors, I will be able to just add this or use this directly in my code, if I understand correctly. Although I see that this is still it's unread. Okay, yeah, that's no problem. I will read it. But then we'll have an options of identity options. And by the way, the identity options class is something that we also need to create. So let's create this. So question is, though, should I create this in these services? No, let's. So usually we use the options pattern here in ASP.NET Core. So what I will do is add new folder and options. And in this options folder, I will add a new class. I will call this class identity options. Okay. And then this class identity options, I will need some stuff regarding my. Oh, actually, they will already have it because that's part of Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. So actually, I don't need identity options here. I don't need identity options. Let's delete this. Now I remember because identity options is already part of this. So yeah, we don't need this. How can I close this? This. Cool. So in this case means that I can just use Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. Let me see, as everything is okay with the stream still. Okay. Would this revalidation implementation work with Blazor VAS app, which is using Azure AD B2C? Like in Blazor VAS, or if you want to use like revalidation for also WebAssembly interactivity, there is a different class, base class, that needs to be implemented for that one. And basically, if you have both of them, you can, in this new Blazor model, you can basically have revalidating authentication state for the server and revalidating authentication state for the client, for WebAssembly. Now, the logic for the revalidation is fully up to you because that's where we will implement it. So you can definitely do this revalidation however or whichever way you want to do it. If you want to kind of like validate something with Azure AD, B2C, or the regular Azure AD, you can do that there. If you want to validate something, I don't know, with some Auth0 stuff, you can use Auth0 APIs and connect to them and talk to them. So the logic on how you implement this revalidation is 100% up to you. The only thing that kind of like you do here is obviously if you don't register this type of service, Blazor will use a default implementation, which might not be, let's say, optimal to you. So that's why I wouldn't kind of like use the default implementation. I would always kind of like give a custom implementation for that. But to answer it once again, for WebAssembly, you have to, the idea of revalidation is the same, but you have to implement a different base class that's kind of like has to do with WebAssembly. I think it's something with revalidating WebAssembly authentication state or something like this. So yeah, but definitely you would have to do this also in Blazor WebAssembly, or if you have components that have Blazor WebAssembly interactivity. And yeah, we have these options, and I think then basically that's everything that we will need here in this one. Now, the way that we want to implement, I think what this class needs is a logger factory. So let's actually provide a logger factory. Logger factory, but let's have it like this, just iLogger factory, let's call it logger factory. My formatting got a little bit weird here. Okay, but what's the problem right now? I need to pass it to the base class, obviously. I need to pass it to the base class, obviously. I don't, to be honest, I haven't worked a lot with this primary constructor, so I'm not exactly sure how I can do this. Can I chain this together? No, I can't. Can I just add this? So if you have an idea on how to do this, Like the idea is that in the primary constructor, basically after the constructor, I kind of like need to also inherit this revalidating, but then I also need to provide the logger factory to the base. So it kind of like doesn't work this way. I'm not sure about it. Let's see if there is any comment. Press iLogger factory to auth state revalidation. Yeah, but I did this. I did pass auth state. Okay, and then just add the term revalidating. I can pass it directly. Aha. Yeah, obviously, because that one. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You just helped a lot with this. Okay, so yeah, now we have passed this logger factory. Okay, so this class actually needs that that logger factory. Cool. So now let's go back to our stuff here. And okay, so now the next thing that we need to do is obviously implement a way in which we kind of like want to do this validation. But let me just here. So to do the validation, we will need the user manager, because the user manager will check basically, or based on the user manager, we can check the ASP.NET user in the database and see, for instance, the timestamp for the login, and that should basically match it. So in order to use this, because once again we are in an application that we don't know exactly if we are in the context of a request or if we are in interactivity, what I would prefer to do is await using var scope equals scope factory, no, service scope factory dot create scope async. And I guess I can pass here in the cancellation token because I have it. Cool. Await term. Okay, why is this? Because we need to make it async. Sorry, not here, but here. Okay, now we should be create scope async. What's the problem with the create scope? See, okay, no overload. So it doesn't take the cancellation token. Okay, then I don't provide the cancellation token. So let's see, is there any other comment? So thanks, I'm learning so much. I'm really happy if anybody can learn something from this, because as you see, I also kind of like get stuck a lot. So yeah, that kind of like happens. Now, the one thing that I want to do is for user manager, and now I want to use the created scope to get scope get service provider dot get required service. This is not a keyed service, it's just a regular one, and this service will be the user manager of identity user. Cool. Now we have this user manager of identity user, and now it's actually the scope or the validation logic itself that we want to do. And to keep things cleaner here, I will just, where is my mouse? I don't see my mouse anymore. Here. I will have here a private async scope bool, and let's call this validate security time stamp async. because that's how we want to actually do the validation. We want to check the security timestamp if it's still the same as we have the one in the database. Now, one thing that we will have here is, first of all, we'll get here the user manager as an incoming. Okay. Oh. Although, actually, now I'm thinking we actually don't need this here. We can do everything directly here. But then what would be the logic of having a private method for this altogether? Yeah, no, I want to keep the logic separately, where I do the check from where I do wire everything up together. So I'll identity user. Throughout one reason why I want to keep this is because if I want to kind of like unit test, I would unit test this one and make sure that the validation works, that the validation logic works. I can even mock this, but then I don't really want to test this one, because if this one is okay, then if this one, maybe I just want to integration test it, but not unit test it. So let's user manager. That's why I kind of like want to keep these two type of logics differently. So the validation itself and the wiring everything up. Okay, so now that we are here, we can create an instance or get an instance of the claims principal, which is the user, and the user manager get user async will actually get this automatically from us, and here we have, let me just check once again. So here we have the authentication state. So this is something that we will also need. We'll need the authentication. Although, no, we'll need a claims principal. Claims, and we'll just call it principal. And we'll give the claims principal based on the current authentication state when we pass, when we will call this method. So we can then use this principal, simply get the user async. And now, if we have this user, we can say if user is null. Obviously, we still need parentheses. User is null. We just want to return false. Else, so else, what we want to do is to get the principal stamp. And to get this principal stamp, yes, we have here on principal, we have this find first value. This is what I am looking for. And here in the options, let's see, options. What do we have here in options? On the value of the options, we want to look for claims identity, and here we have security stamp claim type. Let me just maybe move this on another line. So this will give me the security timestamp of the principal that's currently basically logged in, or that currently the authentication state provider is aware or last worked with and knew that it was okay. And now let's have here this user stamp, and this user stamp went await user manager dot get security stamp async, and we need to provide here the user that we did just get earlier. And now the only thing that we need to do is return a comparison between these two. So we'll have here return principal stamp equals to user stamp. Now, if those two are not equal, it means that the user is not authenticated anymore. So how we will use this method right now is we'll just simply return a wait. Here we'll call this validate authentication state async, and in this validate authentication state async we need to pass in the user manager that we have just created, and we need to pass in the claims principal. I'll go with this on another line because this will be long, because the claims principal is on the authentication state. Where is my mouse again? Although we just use authentication state dot user. So this is the claims principal. Okay, what is the problem here? So this is claims principal, and this is takes in claims principal. So what's the problem? Cannot convert system claims principal to system. Why does it expect a cancellation token here? I'm not aware of this. Because this one doesn't expect a cancellation token. Ah, sorry. That's a different method here. Yep. Cool. Yeah, now it should work. And now basically my service here will check the authentication state each 20 minutes, and if something changed to the authentication state, this will return false and the user will not be authenticated anymore. So Blazor will not recognize it anymore as an authenticated user. Now, the idea is that the next thing that we need to do is, after we have added this, you are calling yourself. Yeah, exactly. Kind of like it was a nice recursion bug, I would say. Cool. So now we need to basically come back to our iService collection, because we need to also basically register this. So services dot add scope, and here we need to add, for instance, the first one is we want to add the authentication state provider, and then we need to specify our class, auth state revalidation. So we have registered. So if we don't register this service, basically no revalidation will happen. But now we specifically say that, hey, this authentication state provider should have this authentication state revalidation mechanism to revalidate the authentication state. Cool. And now that we have added this Blazor part to our authentication pipeline, the next thing that we would need to do is services add authentication, obviously. And here's where we configure the authentication itself. And what type of scheme do we want to use? Options. Now here, basically, we have some identity constants that we have in ASP.NET Core. And what we want to do is perform a cookie authentication. And for cookie authentication, because here we just log in via username and password. So it's not that we need the JSON web token right now to basically to call an API. You just need to authenticate, and using cookies is, from my point of view, the preferred way of doing authentication if you can. Because you cannot use cookies cross-site, there are additional security features to cookies that are not present in JWTs. So for instance, I prefer always a cookie-based authentication when possible, and here it's obviously possible, to let's say JSON Web Token-based authentication. Okay, so in this case, default scheme. And the default scheme is important because this is how we will also authenticate the user, and this we will use this identity constant. And here we have this constant application scheme. And if you take a look at this constant application scheme, basically it says the scheme used to identify applications authentication cookies. So it's basically based on cookies. Now, there is one other thing that we want to add here is options dot, which should be the default sign-in scheme. And in my case, I want the default sign-in scheme to be exactly the same because I want to sign in with this cookie. Cool. Now, options, I also like to specify a default challenge scheme. Options default challenge scheme, and this would be once again identity constant dot application scheme. So it will be exactly the same. And now, after we have done this, we need to add cookie. And I think it's add cookies. No, it's not. I think it's add identity cookies. Yes, it's add identity cookies. Okay. Oh, sorry, I needed to stretch a little bit. Okay. Is anybody still watching, by the way? Okay. Yep. So not as many as before, but still a lot. So thank you very much for hanging in. I know it's maybe not that easy, so I really appreciate you standing by. If you want to get it a little bit more interactive, whenever you have a question or ideas or just want to say something, yeah, just feel free to say it. We want to build here a community in which we want to encourage people to talk. So even if you ask some questions, other members here in the chat really are invited to answer those. So not really always wait for me. That would be great and totally appreciated. Cool. Now that we have also added the authentication cookies, there is one other very important trick, and this one is related to this new Blazor. Yes, I'm using .NET 8. There was a question there, and that's why this Blazor that we have is the default Blazor SSR, so the Blazor Web App. Now, with this Blazor Web App, there's actually not a problem, but things are working a little bit differently than what we were expected or accustomed to when using Blazor Server or even Blazor WebAssembly previously. And the thing is that now that I log in with cookie, I need a way to configure that cookie. Why? Because in that cookie, I can specify, for instance, what should be the login path. And I will need this in order to be able to implement the redirect to login functionality if the user is not authenticated. So this is more similar to how we will usually do things in regular ASP.NET Core MVC applications or Razor Pages applications. So obviously you can do things even when you do and register the authentication or when you register the cookie. But what I want to show you basically, because right now we are just setting one or two settings here, but probably later we'll want to add some more features and more settings to our cookie. And the way that I want to kind of like do this is I would like to add, and I think I'll add it still here in the services, and I will add a new class, even though it's strictly not really a service, but I don't know exactly where to add it in another place. Let's start by adding here in the service, and we'll move it later if I have a better idea or if you have a better idea. So I will call this class cookie event, and this class will be a very simple class. It just will have to implement or inherit cookie authentication events. And as part of the fact that we are inheriting this cookie authentication event, we can override public override task, and I want to override the redirect to login. Okay, redirect context. Okay, I don't really need, or I need the context actually, but not to return it. So I have context, and on the context you see that I have redirect URI, and this redirect URI, it will be simply just login. Otherwise the default will be identity account login with uppercase and so on and so forth. So now I want to actually do this and return base redirect login, and I pass the modified context so that the engine behind can kind of like take care of all the other stuff. So this is the only thing that I wanted to add here. Now I would add this one, this cookie events class is a very simple one, but not here. I'll come back here where I configure authentication. So builder.services. No, it's not builder here, because this is the extension method services, add scope, and I would add my cookie events here. Cool. So now that my cookie events is added and it's inheriting this cookie events class, what we can do further is we can say here builder dot no, not builder, services, obviously services, configure application cookie. That should be the one. Okay, and this one takes in some options as well, and in these options I can specify event type, and here type of cookie events. Cool. And now basically I have configured the entire engine, kind of like know where to look exactly when I want to do a redirect to login. And the cookie will contain this information about the login URL, and that's how we can basically easily implement this. Now the only thing that we still need to do here is to return the services, which we obviously also do. Now I see that we have some exceptions here. Obviously I forgot a lot of here it's obviously that's not an object initializer, so yeah, we need this. So no error messages anymore. Okay, async method, I don't like this, but we will change this. What's missing? Property name before semicolon. Okay, here there's a semicolon that we don't need actually. So this warning should also go away, and this async yeah, this one will also take care about this. It's actually the same one. Okay, so the warnings will also go away when we will implement everything here. Let me check the chat. Do we have anything else here? We need semicolon on the authentication options. Yes, Sudi, thank you very much. That was indeed a problem. Yeah, fortunately we have IDs that can help with this. And yeah, unfortunately there is always a delay when streaming between when I say or do something and when it arrives to you. That's why I cannot really always respond in real time. And I sorry for that, but that's just how live streaming works basically. Is there any other question? No, I don't see any other question here. Well, once again, just ask or just get in touch, or just if you want to discuss anything. You can see this also as an ask me anything live stream, so just ask and we'll talk about that. Cool. But now we need to come back here to wire different things together. So in program.cs, I guess we need to come to also add this configure authentication. Builder.services. configure authentication. So it's basically the extension method on which we did work so far just a lot. Now, now I'm thinking about something because yes, we have added here authentication. Yeah, I guess more or less we should be kind of like be good to go with this one. Theoretically, the middleware for user authentication and user authorization, we don't really need to add them, but there is one important thing that we need to add for the redirect login. And actually the redirect login is actually very easy. Now the thing is, or how you achieve it the easiest way is by simply coming on the imports.razor and adding here attribute, and the attribute is obviously authorize, and this will require authorization for the entire section of the page. Now I also had another import here in these components, so I'll obviously also come here and also add this import authorize. Now let me run the application, because right now I would expect that when I run the application and when I navigate to my Blazor app, it should redirect me to the login. So the redirection to the login should theoretically just work. If not, we'll see exactly where the problem is. In the meantime, if you have any question, just feel free to share it. How do you like the stream so far? Do you think it's useful? I know what we are doing today are fairly simple things, not really a lot of microservices, but believe me, there will be a lot of microservices stuff in this stream in the coming episodes. But first of all, we need to set things up. Cool. So here I am in my Aspire dashboard once again. So let me go here. And you see that I am redirected to this login page. And this is right now my login. So basically this works. I also had a logo basically in the template that right now I don't have it. So the redirection to login works. So I'm not authenticated. I am therefore I'm able to actually see this. Now, for instance, if I will remove the attribute for the from the imports, then I will be kind of like I will see the home page that I did see also earlier. Now also look here that I have been redirected to this login. So if we wouldn't have used these cookie events and setting up those cookie settings, I would have been redirected automatically to identity accounts login. And obviously now I'm redirected directly to the login component, which is fairly cool. And which also means that we can kind of like maybe come back to this idea of implementing the login and all the logic that we want to have inside of it. Now, let me just close everything. Implementing the login is theoretically very easy. However, there is one other thing that we need to do, or two other things that we need to do. First of all, we need to do migrations. Now, doing migrations in this setup will be a little bit more tricky, but just a little bit, because for each project we'll have to keep the migration separately. So add migration. Let me check, where is my head located? But yeah, I guess you can see what I'm typing here, which should actually be fine, I guess. Just checking a few things about the stream, if everything's working okay, but it seems that it is working okay. Cool. Okay, so add migration out, and now there are some things that we need to specify. like the startup project for us should be this web smart school web. But why does it have a web here? I'm not sure exactly. So I think it's startup project, and the startup project should be smartcool.web. Then I also want to have the output gear. In the project, I want to have it data and migrations. I assume that the directory will be created automatically in the data folder that we already have, if it's not there already. So yeah, let me just add the migration and see if it will fail or not. In the meantime, let me also check the comments. By the way, I'm watching but 15 minutes behind. Okay. Well, this will also be available on demand afterwards, so yeah, obviously there's no problem with that. Cool. So build started, build succeeded. So it seems that we have a winner. We have a migration here. Okay, so obviously let's transform this in a file scope namespace. And yeah, that should be okay. So see, this is the entire migration that we have here with creating all the table, ASP.NET roles, users, role claims, user claims, and so on and so forth. So basically everything that ASP.NET Core Identity adds through its own DB context. So everything we have here. So now that we can, what did I do here? Okay. I think I did something that I didn't want to do. But yeah, that's it. So we have... Cool. So now we have here update database. Once again, we need to specify the startup project. It should be smartcool.web. By the way, when we will have other microservices, when we run the migrations for them, we'll have to use their startup projects and their migration folders and so on and so forth. So let's see if everything is okay. It seems yes, my tables were or are still being created, which is okay. I think since I have used SQL Server Object Explorer for this, we have the Smart School, and here we have tables. And in the tables, you see that we have all the tables that were created plus the EF migration history. So it's how Entity Framework applies migrations. Okay, now we have added the database, so everything is there. And now there is this other trick, because I want at the beginning on the login functionality to actually also create a super admin account for me. And then we'll kind of like move that functionality away. But initially, I really want to kind of like do that. And the question is, how should I do this? And I need to search something on the other screen because I have already prepared something to kind of like be a little bit more productive with that. I think I have moved that in a specific service. Or where did I do this? I think it's in one of the services that I had. Just give me one moment. So, in the meantime, if anybody knows a nice joke about programmers, maybe you just post it here. in the chat, that would be totally nice. Cool. So we have this create student. No, it's not there. So where did I move that functionality? Did I totally delete it? Okay, hopefully not. Ta-dum. Yeah, I guess we'll have to do everything from scratch. Because I think I have deleted the functionality ahead. So congratulations, you received 100 messages. That's a message from Restream. Okay, thank you everybody for posting 100 messages. No, I was searching on another screen where, because as I said, for this live stream I have done some preparations where I have kind of like coded a lot of the functionalities in advance. And the idea is that what I wanted to do now is kind of like in this login, for the first time when I log in, I want to automatically basically create my user. So I want to just create a new user and yeah, then be able to also assign me a role as a super admin to make sure that everything works. And that code, then obviously I want to remove / delete. And yeah, that's why kind of like I thought I kept that for reference, but as commented code, but it seems that I have deleted it. So yeah, no problem. We'll go about it from scratch. So let's go to our login form. So all the stuff that will happen here in this perform login, but we will need some more services. So first of all, we have this navigation manager, but we will also have to inject the user manager of identity user. Here probably I'll have to add a using for this, and let's call it user manager. Then there are a few other things that I would probably need to kind of like have here. Through those things, what I would also have is I will also need a user store. All of these are from Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity, by the way. So I user store, and this is also of type identity user. User store. What I'll need, I want to manage roles because I want to add myself to a role. So it would be the role manager of identity role. Role manager. Okay, and then I will also need the sign in. This is of identity user once again. So that's all that I need right now. I think these are all the services. Okay, cool. So the first thing that we need to do here is when we get basically this into this method, the first thing is var identity equals new identity user. Now, once we have the identity user, we can use the different services to basically set different things. Now, what I can set first is the var. Let's just call it result because I don't recall exactly what it returns. But I have user manager dot set username async, so it's a wait, and the username would be, in our case, just for this one we'll have input dot login form. We'll have login form dot email. And what does the result return? It needs a user. It needs the identity user. Okay, it needs the identity user first, obviously, because otherwise it doesn't know where to set it. Okay. I then have to also specify it correctly. In this case, the result will be an identity result. Obviously, here if we can check if it's null, then we can throw. But once again, I will just concentrate on getting the functionality to work now. And then we'll also need to set the email. For email, we need an email store var email store equals. And here, I guess we just user email store. I guess we can cast this directly to the iUser store. I think that's also generic. Yes. Then is but here let's name it set username result. Probably will remove those variables because we don't need them. Set email result equals email and here I guess we need to also specify the identity and login form. Or let me check. Okay, what do we need to provide? Identity user and the string email. Okay, but we provide an identity user and an email. So what's the problem here? Okay, this is there is no argument corresponds to required parameter. Cancellation token. So that requires a cancellation token. Okay, so I don't have a cancellation token here. So I'll just put cancellation token none. Okay, but still they have some problem. What's the problem? Cannot assign void to an implicitly typed variable. Okay, so this just returns a task. Okay, so in this case we just don't need this variable. Okay, you see I don't really know all the things basically directly from my head, so I'm still figuring also things out. So then I have set the email store, I have set the user store. Now I guess that the next step that I can do is basically var created identity equals user. Actually, no. User manager create async. So I need to provide here an identity user. something like this, and this will create, but yeah, we'll see exactly, because I don't recall exactly the order in which we need to do this. But theoretically, when we have this, it means that basically our user is already created. And if you see here, this task of identity result, so it's still a result. Okay, now the next thing, so if we have already the user, the next thing that I would like to do is kind of like look a little bit into this idea of roles, because I want to by default assign me a role of super admin. So I need to kind of like create that first. So I'm still looking into some stuff here. Although, so here basically this page will be 100% server rendered. So it means that we don't need the service scope factory. So I guess we can live without that. The email is the username as well. Yes, in our case, yes, but you can configure it to be differently. So in our case, yes. Okay, so what I want to do next, as said, is kind of like have this idea of roles. Now, to have roles here, we need the role manager. But first we need a new role. Var super admin role equals, it will be just a string. But actually, new identity role. Okay. So this would be my new identity role. And now what I can do here is I can use the role manager var role role manager dot create async, and then I can specify my per admin role, and obviously I need to also await it. So now my role is created, and now the only thing that I need to do here is I need to basically assign myself the super admin role, which is this one. And here, I don't know, var assign role result equals user manager dot add to role async. Yeah, that's what I need. And my role is, I guess here I need to provide a string only. I need to provide the identity user and the role, the string role. So my identity user is, let's say, this created identity. Because after I create it, probably that gets some more information assigned to it. So I will use this the created identity, and then I will just provide the string super admin. Now, once again, all the things that I'm doing here are just a workaround for the fact that I don't have a user registration right now. The user registration will be a part of the functionality of the application, because administrators or secretaries or managers or whatever in a school, they should be able to create, or they would be the ones that would create the users, the students, the teachers, the employees, the parents, whatever. So it means that they will create the users. So that's why I didn't create this. Okay, but what's... it's created identity. That's not... now it should work. Why doesn't it work? Now this result is identity result. Why is this not working? cannot convert Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity result to identity. But okay, why not? I don't have a payload here, so I'm not sure exactly what's wrong here. The idea is this this created identity is a task of identity user. Sorry, I'm blind. Would work now, or no? Identity result. Come on. Okay, no. Sorry. Let's see if there are any questions. So coming back to this, do you need an await create async? Yes, that was one of the problems. But now one other problem is that basically when I create user, I pass in the identity, and since this is a reference type, all the changes that are made are also available here. So what I actually need to pass here is not the created identity, because that's just a result, nothing else, but I would need to pass in the identity itself, which is this one. So yeah, right now I guess it works. Let me just to make sure that things are the same, just use the copy paste here. Obviously, probably that would be wiser to put this in a constant, but right now for only one value that I will also delete at a certain point, I think it doesn't really make sense. So what I can do here is, okay, I have added myself to the role. Obviously, this is also something that we need to await. Okay, what is this assigned to role result? It's also an identity result. Okay, so after I have added myself to the role, I guess we are, or we should be good to go. Which means that right now I can go to the next step and I can actually proceed with creating a login, basically. And to create the login itself, now what I could do, I mean, there will be a small difference, but anyway, no, I think it would be okay. Now what I can do here is var, no, without var, await in manager dot password sign in async. So kind of like revalidated my username and password are correct. Now all my user or my identity user should be created. So what I have to specify here is the login form dot email and login form dot address. Okay, and not address, but password. And here I have to specify some parameters. I want this to be on true because I want to keep me signed in. And then for the lockout, I don't want to lock out on failure because I don't want to have troubles through. Let's go on the next line. Lock out on failure, and I want to set this to false. I want to keep things as easy as possible for myself. What's the problem? No problem. Okay, but now I remember there's another thing that I want to do. So now I have here just a username and an email. And what I want to do here is to also add some claims to my user, like the first name and the last name. Those I want to be my claims. So where I can do this after I create the user. So let me have here var claims equals new list of claim. Here I'll probably need a using. Here I need a semicolon, and then I have new, and basically when I create a new claim, I have to provide a name for the claim, and the name would be first name and the value. The value in this case should be done. What is the problem here? Constructor that takes 0 arguments. I can provide this directly into constructor. I don't need an object initializer for that. Yep. So the first one will be the claim name, first name, and one, let's make it like this. And then also we have another one, and this would be the last name. And then my last name would be Frasco, which is this one. We have these new claims. Now that we have the claims, we can var await user manager dot add claims async. Yep. But yes, there's a method that takes in several claims at a time. Okay, without the wait. Don't need the wait here. What's the problem here? I need to specify the user, obviously. Now everything should be go. So this should add the claims. And by the way, let's clear things up. Once again, I want to have things working here. You would use these results, and if they are failed, you would kind of like, I don't know, throw errors, redirect to some error pages or whatever. Here I want to just keep things simple and workable. And yeah, please don't take this as kind of like, okay, this is the code that I need to run in production applications. That's the code that you need to run in a proof of concept application. But to bring this to the production, you need to add kind of like all the stuff that needs to be added, like logging, exception handling, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here also let's not use this, or no, because we don't use this. So we don't need that. I think we also don't need this. All the variables. Okay, cool. So now I have also added my claims. This will, by the way, add the claims to the database. So every time I will get the user from the database, when I will do this password sign-in async, there will be all these claims information in that specific claims principle, and therefore they will also be in the cookie that I will set. And this will actually help me basically to later also implement role-based authorization, so that only me as a super admin, that I am able to access the functionalities that are, for instance, concerning of adding roles to the application, removing roles to the application, assigning roles to users, and so on and so forth. So that's why I need to add these claims, so that whenever I perform a sign-in, these claims are present in that specific claims principle. Cool. Obviously, if you want to create a token afterwards, you can use that claims principle to create a token, and you will have, once again, all the claims from the database in that specific token. So that's actually a very, very important part. Now, after I have signed in, so let's go once again. I can then just navigate to homepage, and I should be able to see the homepage. So let me walk once again through the entire logic. So first of all, I create an identity user. Then I set the username with the user manager. Then I create an email store, and I use the email store to also set the email. And then I create the identity async, although to be honest, at this point, I'm not 100% sure if I did already this, if I also need to do this, but okay, for now, better safe than sorry. But if you know that I'm wrong, just let me know. Then I want to add some claims to my user. That's the first name and the last name. So I add these new claims and use the user manager to add the claims. Then I want to add a role to myself, to this user, and it's the super admin role. So I create the role first, and then I add to role async. that would add everything in the database. And then this sign-in password sign-in async will once again get all the data, all the claims for the roles, for the additional claims, and will create a claims principal and sign me in. So then I can navigate back to the login page. So that would be kind of like the logic. Let me check again what we provide as inputs. Here we provide the email from the login form. Here we provide also the email for the login form, the password from the login form. Then add claims async. Yes, this one, and yes to this one. Super admin, I guess we should be kind of like good to go. The email address that I will provide will be the correct one, so I will not hard code it. Cool, so I guess we are kind of like ready for a first, let's say, demo of this functionality. So let's run our Aspire application. And after the first login, if everything succeeds, of course, I will simply just comment out this code and we'll just keep the sign in. And I will just comment it out because probably we'll reuse it in some other functionalities when we will manage roles and things like this. So that's why hopefully I will do not the same mistake that I did in the preparation project. Guys and girls, do you have any questions? Just, I don't know, say something. I feel alone. I really feel alone here. Cool, so that's our Aspire dashboard. Let's go to the application. We see that I am successfully logged in. Let's provide my email and let's provide very simple password, simple and not secure password at all, and just log in. And I can't believe it. So I didn't really expect everything to work from the first place. So yeah, never here. So you see that basically right now I'm logged in because I'm not redirected to the login anymore. So right now basically I'm logged in. So I managed to log myself in, which is actually super interesting. Cool. Let's do some stuff here because we want to be able to play around. First of all, I guess if we take a look, for instance, in the SQL server and Smart School, and here in this Smart School, let's go to ASP.NET users and view data. You will kind of like see the proof that my user was created here. So I have everything here. Cool. Yeah, I didn't really expect to go from the first try. I really didn't expect that. Let me check the roles to see that we also have roles here. Yes, we have the super admin role, which is okay. And then the user roles, because there should be something here. Yes, cool. So it seems that everything was added correctly. Claims. Let me check the claims. User claims. ASP.NET user claims. View data. Yep, first name and last name. So yeah, indeed everything worked like a charm actually. Cool. Now that we have added my user, basically, so you see that we have basically spent a lot of time just doing this stuff here. And actually right now the login functionality that we need is just this here. Await sign-in manager password sign-in async. That's it. You don't need anything else. You just need this, and yeah, that's the whole sign-in. All the other stuff was just to create my first user and to give it the necessary roles and claims and things to work with the application. So now is the sign-in manager is the only one that we are using. I guess we can. No, I will keep these injections here. Sorry, that's not the best practice. Because when I will use this functionality from here, I want to be able to also see very easily what I need to inject. So I will keep that. Now, the one other thing that I want to do here is kind of like to play a little bit with this stuff and add also the logout functionality. That would be a Razor component, and we'll just call it logout. Now the logout Razor component actually is very easy to implement because we will not need any type of markup. We just need to perform basically a logout and a redirection. Now, first of all, what we need here is on this page. So I want this to be accessible via logout. And then I will need to inject only the sign in manager. I need to add the using for that. But why did it add it here? I hate you. So yeah, let me sign in manager of identity user. Cool. And sign in. And I will need the navigation manager to navigate away after the sign out. Inject manager navigation. Okay, and now the only thing that I need to do in this code is protected override async task on initialized. I mean, I have IntelliSense, I have Copilot, and it doesn't really suggest anything useful. That's unfortunate. Wait. Sign in manager. Sign out async. And in the sign out async, actually no, I don't need to provide anything else, because the sign in will sign me in automatically with the default scheme, which is the cookie, and the sign out will also sign me out with the default scheme. So I don't need to specify a different scheme here. So the only thing that we need to do afterwards is navigation, navigate to, and after a sign out, that would be actually a good text, because or a good test, because after the sign out, I don't want to redirect to login. I want to redirect to the home page, and the home page should redirect me to the login if everything works correctly. So now I think we should be able to actually test login and logout functionality fairly easily. So let me just run the application again. So Aspire is loading. Is there anybody left here in the stream? Okay, so let me check. Why can't this site be reached? Why? Because, sorry. So that's the Aspire dashboard. Let me check. So still a lot of people, 46. Thank you very much. You're still being here. So if somebody joined a little bit later, there was one announcement that I have made right at the beginning of the stream, and I want to reiterate it. I will also start a newsletter that will be fairly different to all the other newsletters that you are accustomed with. And if you want to join my newsletter, here is where you can find out more and then subscribe for this newsletter. And there you will also see kind of like some very key points why I think that this newsletter is a little bit different. We'll receive it on a bi-weekly basis. So basically we'll start on Thursday, and each second Thursday you will receive a new newsletter containing a lot of interesting stuff there. So just go there and subscribe to this newsletter, and yeah, I think that that would kind of like be useful for you, or if you think that would be useful for you, obviously. On the newsletter, I will share things, by the way, that I will not share on YouTube or on other channels. There will be very specific custom stuff based also on interactions with you. So it's the kind of content that will be in this newsletter will not be accessible anywhere else. Cool. So now, right now, basically remember that when we did log in, like when we did a sign in, we had this is persistence, and we have set it to true because I wanted to keep my authentication cookie. And basically, if I go here on this one, and if I go on application and cookies, you can see here that we have ASP.NET Core Identity application. By the way, using the cookie events or the cookie settings, we can also change the name of the cookie, which is something that we will probably do at a certain point because I want to give it something more meaningful to my application. So this is basically the cookie. It means that I am authenticated. Now, if I log out, means that I just need to navigate to this component. Okay, you see that the cookie is gone, so I'm not authenticated. And even though in the logout I have redirected to the home, since I am not authenticated anymore, it has automatically redirected me to the login, which is kind of nice. So let's do a new login, and let's see if I still remember my password. And here I have login. Yep, you see, once again I have the cookie. So the cookie is once again, and here I have my page. So I have working authentication for a user for which I have added some custom claims, and for a user there for which I also added a custom role, which is the super admin role, and this will actually help me. And let me go here on traces. Let's see exactly what do we see here. So when we go on the login, see that it kind of like actually only went here, and we see all the stuff. But what I would also expect to see if I go on the logs, let's go, you see all the SQL statements basically that were logged in automatically and instrumented by .NET Aspire. So everything is here. So I can see really everything here. If I want to see exactly, okay, what SQL query did my application run, I can very easily see it here. So everything is instrumented, and also it's structured, so I can create queries for specific type of logs or searching for specific information for specific value. And that's kind of like very, very cool. And I think we'll see how useful it is once we add 2 or 3 other projects to our solution, and when we will be able to kind of like trace an end-to-end functionality through different microservices and what calls were made. That's actually kind of like very, very nice. But yeah, so right now we have this login and logout. Everything is implemented correctly. Everything seems to work. And I think that at least for this live stream, we can call it a day. Remember, for those of you who want to get access to the source code, is that you need to be a member of the Code Wrinkles channel on YouTube. So when you're watching a video on the Code Wrinkles channel, there's a button just below the video that says join, and you can join as a member. Now, what I will do after each stream, I will provide the source code exactly how I left it when I closed the stream to all the members through the membership tab that you will see on the channel once you are a member. For the source code for these videos, you don't need to be an ambassador member. You can be just a regular supporter member, like the lowest tier of membership, and you will still get access to the source code. So it's very important, but this is the only way that I will make source code for these live streams available. And right now probably it's fairly simple, but I think when it will get more and more complex, I think source code might be important. And it will also be important for you because you will have snapshots, like how the source code was after the first stream, after the second stream, and you will kind of like see how the functionality grew. So yeah, just hit the join membership button and join as member to get access to this source code. And also join the newsletter, because I'm keen to start sending out some newsletter and to see what your feedback is on my idea on how I want to have this newsletter shaping up, especially that I want, as I said in the beginning of this stream, I don't and I will never look at myself as being an influencer. No matter how many followers I will have, I just try to be a mentor. And having this newsletter is just another way that I can think I can kind of like provide useful mentorship to people. That's even for free, so you don't have to pay anything for that. Well, and I think that would be a good option for you to kind of like get involved in this Code Wrinkles community and learn together. Now, obviously, if you join as a member, there is one other very nice perk to it, because we have a private Discord channel for the Code Wrinkles members, and we hang out there a lot, and we talk a lot, and everybody has questions about their projects, and we do kind of like code reviews and brainstorming, and sometimes we debate. We do not agree always on things, but everything is very civilized there, and kind of like it's a very nice atmosphere, and I think people can learn a lot from there. Myself, I am learning a lot from there, because we have members that come from different kind of like backgrounds. For instance, we have a guy that's kind of like, he's more like an infrastructure guy, like a sysadmin guy, but it said, okay, how can I use coding and .NET and ASP.NET Core to kind of like make my tasks easier? And he has done some crazy stuff with programming, automating a lot of workflows, automating virtual desktop deployments with hundreds of thousands of virtual desktops. Like, he's working for a big bank, and he has a lot of very valuable insights on things and that he's doing, that from which I also learn. There's another member that he's doing a side project that's kind of like really commercial, but it's already very complex, and we already have discussions about this, and really I think it's a very good place to learn and to get in touch with a lot of different topics. And yeah, that's a benefit of being a Code Wrinkles member, and being part of this community that tries to mentor itself, I would say. Cool. Then the last thing that I would like to say is that the next live stream in this series will not be on next Sunday, but on next Monday. I will post, however, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on the community tab on YouTube. So I will create it in advance. You will always see. You can then hit the notify me button. But it will be on Monday, not on Sunday, because I think on Sunday there's a concert in my town that I want to attend, so I won't be able to kind of like do the stream, but I will do it on Monday, nevertheless. Cool. So I guess that's kind of like it. Thank you really very much for joining and standing by for such a long time. And I can't wait to get in touch with you again then in the next stream, and obviously during the next videos that I will publish this week on the YouTube channel. So this being said, thank you very much for watching, and really keep safe, keep coding, and have a great week. authentication and Auth for authorization. And those flows have very exact specifications. There are RFCs for